Welcome to the Daily Agenda. Oh, today I finally obtained the Britain First remigration policy, and such a rigmarole it was. Anybody would have thought it was a top secret plan to invade France instead of the immigrants invading us through France, that is. Reverse immigration. Well, in truth, what does remigration mean? Reverse migration. That's right. Sending them back along the remigration routes they came along, only that we wouldn't send them back across the English Channel in dinghies, obviously. Yes, well, this remigration policy, I just really cannot understand why there was such a top secrecy mentality towards it in Britain first. But one thing I will say before I analyse it in some detail is that I'm tempted to believe, having read it, that it's designed to sink the entire remigration argument, that it's so fanciful and just has no root or basis in reality, quite frankly. And that's why I'm tempted to believe, because I just couldn't for the life of me fathom why they'd actually produced a policy of this nature. And then I thought to myself, well, why the secrecy? The Colonel Blimp secrecy. I mean, crikey, I have a cunning plan. Baldrick, absolutely. So it was like an episode of Blackadder. And then finally obtaining it in the manner that I did, from the people that I did, just put the the icing on the cake, as it were. Yeah, crikey. Honestly, astounding. If you're going to write a remigration policy, then just be open and honest about it and publish it to the world. Yeah, sorry, it's those hand signals again, isn't it? Publish it to the world. My goodness. Yes, publish it to the world. And then everybody can have a look at it and study it and to ascertain if they can actually support such a thing. So Golding himself rants about, yes, well, we're going to remigrate to 10 million people, we're going to send them all back. But hey, here's the kicker. It's going to be in 5 to 7 years' time. They're going to do it all over 5 to 7 years with just 10,000 immigration officers. That's right, immigration enforcement officers. They're going to send back 10 million people with 10,000 immigration officers, and they're going to offer each one a £5,000 resettlement grant. Yes, well, just do some base economics for yourself. That would absolutely bankrupt the economy over a 5 to 7 year period. And logistically, it's just completely impossible to remove 10 million people from this country. Unless, of course, they just decide to do a mass exodus voluntarily and leave without taking the £5,000. You see, my attitude is that those who can afford to pay the cost of remigration, in actual fact, should do so. There's no reason at all why we should pay for the cost of their remigration. All we need to do is issue them with papers to leave the country. And their idea, Britain First, is to give them a 30-day notice for voluntary repatriation, whereupon, if it's not accepted, not complied with, they'll make it mandatory with 10,000 officers. 10,000 officers. Considering the fact on most immigration raids, there's usually about a dozen officers onto one migrant. And do the sums for yourself. It's just does not hold water, any of it. It's ridiculous, in truth. To remove 10 million people from this country, to create what they believe is a 90% white supermajority, it would literally take about 15 years. Literally. At the very minimum, 10 years. And you would need more than 10,000 immigration enforcement officers. You would need at least 25,000 to 50,000. And I would estimate, in terms of the policy that I wrote, a 95% white supermajority, that would take at least 20 years to complete, possibly 25 years, in truth. And that would require, a very large number of immigration enforcement officers, particularly in the initial phases, to remove the most difficult people who refuse to go. And that's the kicker as well, isn't it? Is what happens when they refuse to go. So you've got to remove them by force. Okay? And that's going to take more than just immigration officers, because we know how they want to kick off in these ethnic enclaves that they've created. as a result of mass immigration and the diversity delusion and the balkanization that it always leads to. So the policy set out by Ashley Simon, apparently she wrote this document, and she certainly likes her hyphens, I'll say that. There's hyphens everywhere. It's hyphenated all over the place. There's so many hyphens you can trip over them. But anyway, the hyphenation aside, it's just not grounded in reality. There's no real world thinking, and there's no costing there either. You see, as I said earlier, my idea is that any immigrant who is taking more than 100,000 or more out of this country should pay a 30% remigration tax, and they should also foot the cost of their own remigration. I.e., let's say they're going back to Pakistan. Okay, so they can afford the cost of a single flight to Pakistan. There's no need for a return. They won't be coming back ever. And so why should the government pay for it? And why should we give them £5,000? I mean, they're just living in cloud cuckoo land. Generous resettlement grants. I mean, I had this issue in the British National Party years ago with John Tyndall, who said we would give them generous resettlement grants. Well, how generous? I don't see any need for a resettlement grant when they can actually afford to pay it themselves. And as for the illegals, well, they're just illegal. And those given an amnesty, particularly by the Boris Johnson regime, they're illegal in our eyes, and that is exactly how we will treat them, and we will just remove them from the country. And there's not going to be any resettlement grants given to any of them. They will be removed. Where they can't pay for it, we will foot the cost of their flight to send them back to their countries of origin, or to any country that is prepared to accept them if their country of origin won't accept them. And there'll be no generous resettlement grant of any description. In fact, there will be no resettlement grant of any description. That is for certain. So, look, you've got to be practical and realistic about this. And the thing that's substantially wrong with the Britain First remigration policy is the fact that it's not costed. The timescale is just way, way out of kilt, And to do all of this with 10 to 15,000 immigration enforcement officers is just never going to happen. Never, ever going to happen. It's like a more, I could have put it, detailed form of the pub talk Steve Laws engages in. Pub talk sound bites. Send them all back. They've all got to go. I've not got any, detailed blueprint to make that happen, however, but it sounds good, doesn't it, with the Zoomers in particular. They all must go. Send them back. Off you go. Be gone. Yes. Meanwhile, back in reality, there's just a sheer absence of real-world thinking. And it's pretty much the same with this 90% remigration policy written by Ashley Simon. If that is the case, she claims to have written it. Although, as I said, I have to go back to why the top secrecy mentality. I can't even for the life of me think why they have to be so obstructive in terms of anyone obtaining this policy, because it's nonsense, for a start. Maybe that's the reason why they were so obstructive. But I generally do stick to the opinion that I voiced at the beginning of this podcast that is really set up to sink the whole remigration argument. It's ridiculous. And you can go and read it for yourselves. In fact, I'm not going to post it here because you won't be able to download it anyway. Later on my X timeline, x.com, formerly Twitter, I'll post the entire document. I'll transform it into a PDF document, and you can download it from my X timeline. It's or I'll just put the screen captures on there, probably even easier, and you can read it for yourselves. So there's nothing there to get excited about at all. I could have put it. Probably Joe Blogs down at the pub will get excited. Oh yeah, that's exactly what we need, innit, bro? You know what I mean? Great stuff. Nice one, Golders. Yeah, it's just not rooted in reality. That is the whole problem with it. And why on earth they went for a 90% remigration policy? White supermajority, although they don't use the term supermajority. I went for a 95% white supermajority because I don't actually believe a 100% white supermajority is now feasible because of interracial marriages and relationships and mixed race children. I mean, obviously there are some notable exceptions like Bob Villan, who clearly hates this country and white people in general. We've seen that repeatedly, and I don't see any reason at all why he would be allowed to stay in the country, irrespective of the fact that he has one genetic British parent. He should be remigrated to the West Indies, where I'm sure he'll feel perfectly at home with all the black people that he identifies with so closely. So there has to be exceptions on the grounds of subversion, where they are actually a threat to the national interest, and he most definitely is. He's a threat to the body politic, a threat to the national interest. He's a toxic subversive. So yes, there will be notable exceptions, but 90% white supermajority, not their phraseology, mine, it's not doable in the way that they've put it, simply because the logistics are just ridiculous. As I said, you can't achieve this in 5 to 7 years. That's just wishful thinking. Remove 10 million people in 5 years with 10,000 immigration officers and give them all £5,000 to buy some sweeties with on the plane home. Do you get the point I'm making? It's the stuff of the kindergarten, quite frankly. If Britain First want to be taken seriously as, well, I guess you could say a genuine political outfit, particularly in the context of nationalism, which is what they claim they are. I don't believe they are at all. We're definitely not ethno-nationalists, which a fact they openly admit, credit to them. Then they need to get back to the drawing board and come up with something realistic, because this is nonsense. It really is nonsense. It's just an exercise in wishful thinking. Now, if they had produced a document that was absolutely sterling and I was totally in support of, that's what I would say here in this podcast. That's what I would say. I wouldn't just trash it. That's not my nature to do such things, yeah. But I've read through the document and I just can't for the life of me understand how it could ever work. And any attempt to try and make it work would simply end in disaster. Truthfully, it would. Under-resourced, underfunded, or in some cases overfunded with this £5,000 resettlement grant. They're just living in a dream world. Absolutely living in a dream world. It's not going to happen, and nobody's going to fund it. And nobody worth talking about is going to support it either. So, in truth, they need to go back to the drawing board and come up with something realistic. But frankly, I'll stick to my original opinion that it's designed to sink the entire remigration argument by making it look so absolutely impractical and ridiculous that no one will support it. So therefore, the only other policy that you have that is detailed and tenable and rooted in the real world is the one that I wrote. And I'm not being biased, it just simply is rooted in the real world, because it would take about 20 years to achieve this. I said on the night of the EU ref victory in June 2016 that don't celebrate too hard. Now comes the difficult part, i.e. the enforcement of Brexit, which will take between 15 to 20 years. And here we are, 9 years later, there's a ridiculous piece of paper called a withdrawal agreement. There's no Brexit of any description. Not one of the Brexit policies has been enforced other than this meaningless withdrawal agreement. And this is the point that I'm making. Are we going to have exactly the same thing? Let's say we had an immigration referendum, hypothetically, and said referendum resulted in a 60% majority to carry out mass remigration, and then you leave it to Parliament. It would go down the same tubes as the EU ref, quite frankly. And, this is the whole issue with both Brexit, which was caused primarily by mass immigration. I understand, what Britain First are saying about securing the borders. Absolutely, yes. I've always been in favour of it. I was in favour of it before they were, because I was in the British National Party whilst they were still at school. Both of them. In fact, was Ashley Simon even born back then? But anyway, that's another matter entirely, isn't it? So, again, it's all about enforcement. How do you enforce it? And over a 5-7 year period with so few immigration enforcement officers and these large resettlement grants, it's just cloud cuckoo land stuff. But hey, if someone wants to support something that's rooted in cloud cuckoo land, enjoy the flight into the clouds. I won't be going with you, thank goodness. Thank you for tuning in to the Daily Agenda, and I'll see you again soon. And yeah, we'll get round to analysing the Fuentes Morgan interview, which was an absolute disaster for Piers Morgan. But that's for another time. Good night.